Howdy, howdy, folks. It is Paul Talks Table. It's Paul Talks Tabletop. Yeah, that's what we're calling it. Number two. We're going back to the well with some draw steel here. Brought on my buddy David. We've been playing on Fridays for a while. He's running the current draw steel campaign. Um, what else? Lots of stuff going on. Badges showed up for Gen Con. Oh my god. Woo! They're nice and thin. They're cheap garbage, but I guess if you've got 90,000 people showing up, that's what you want to print it on to save money. Let's see. Where do we go? Where do we go? David, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, my name's David. I've been playing RPGs in some way, shape, or form since high school. Only stopped very briefly. I basically all throughout high school, then into college. Been DM or GM probably a good like 50% of the games I've played, which is really nice because that means that I'm not like, you hear people talk about forever GMs. I'm not one of them. I'm blessed that all of my groups have multiple GMs that we rotate through. I was initially thinking in this lower third here of putting David, rotating GM, down there because I do enjoy playing almost as much as I enjoy running. And I feel like as someone that both runs and plays in games, it makes it really insightful and interesting to be able to note like, okay, like I can see what I'm doing and how this isn't working as a GM, or I can see that what I'm doing as a player isn't kicking things off either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. For a while there, we had maybe 4 or 5 different people that could run stuff that would rotate, depending because we had the mics. Each of them could kind of run stuff. Tom could run stuff, so it was like, yeah, a little bit all
I
over.
mean, there's the glorious part of kind of like our, I feel like my, and maybe your RPG heyday was when we were running little private cons for like friends and like extended friends. We had like probably more people than should have been down there. But we had
Yeah,
like, we were basically running, I think we had 3 to 4 tables of games running in our friend's basement.
yeah.
And
I,
each
th-
of
I
us
think
had
at I
like
think
3 or
at
4
its
players.
I think at its height, we had like 4 tables, and then each time, like for each time slot, the people were like, "I could run this or this," and then people, it would be like whatever the majority voted for. They'd be like, "All right, 5 of us want to play this. We're going to go claim this table and go play it." And we'd do like 3 RPGs over the course of this day. It was usually, what was it, a Saturday? I think Saturday afternoon,
Yeah, typically
something like
A
that.
Saturday, like we started honestly like right around noon, got everyone loaded up with food, and then went until unreasonable hours at night. Probably
Yeah,
had each person probably ran 2 to 3 games. And it was a really good time.
yeah. It was, yeah, we used it too to test out a bunch of stuff because I remember it was like, I think that was the first time I ran Fiasco for a bunch of people, and that was a
Hmm.
good one too because it's almost like a party game because I had like, it was like all the girlfriends slash wives or whatever were in that one, so it was like about a wedding that went sideways, and it was like, okay, cool, and I think I got my brother into it because he's mostly
Hmm.
BattleTech Car Wars war game kind of stuff, so that was easy to kind of rope him into that. I did that. Remember Tomorrow, which is a really cool kind of storytelling cyberpunk game. I'm trying to think of what else. Somebody ran Owl Hoot Trail. I think Jer ran that. That was fun.
Yep.
That
Yeah,
was like
it
a
was
fantasy western.
it really was like, we were running effectively our own little indie games on demand. Like all
Yep.
these little game systems that we had picked up that were like, in general, fairly small books, like things that weren't super rules heavy, but things like bunch of things had like a very narrative bent. Some stuff had other bents. I know I ran at least a couple sessions of It's Not My Fault, which is a really fun like fate generator game that they that they built out over at Evil Hat, which was an absolute blast to just get a game up and running in like 3 seconds flat.
It was like Jer. He ran that on Mighty Thews, and that was like
Hmm.
a 4 page, like really minimalist RPG, but it was great because there wasn't a lot of like I've got to look at all the rules and feats for my character. I was just like, no, I'm going to be a mercenary type guy. And then we had a magician, and Wally was like a sky pirate. So we were like, okay, cool. There you go. You took a concept and just ran with it and got it done in like 3 hours. We just had like a nice short little game with it. So yeah, I think that's the thing. That was kind of one of the really high points in role playing for us was in that mid 20 teens when we were going
Mhm.
to Origins where they had the indie games on demand, and then it was over at Gen Con too, and then we were playing a lot of that, powered by the Apocalypse and different indie games that were just like we created a specific system that isn't this all encompassing way too crunchy thing, and you can get an adventure done in a night, and you're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I like little bite-sized stuff like that. I don't I think too many RPGs these days are trying to do everything, and they do nothing well, So, like D&D. But, I digress. Let's see here. As we're dissecting you here, David, let's go to the, thing that's behind you. You posted this the other day. So where did you find this? What was the idea about this?
Yeah,
And,
so
what's this all
this
about?
so this is the About Me tabletop RPG. This is a template that was made by Awkward GM Corbin, I think over on Twitter or on Reddit, but I saw it like pop up across Reddit and Blue Sky and just people having fun and tossing different games in. And I thought, you know what? I feel like I have a very strange, interesting like About Me tabletop RPG thing. So I tossed this up there to our like little group chat.
I guess now we can get to dissecting these here. What makes Edge of the Empire your favorite Star Wars? Because that's the thing. A lot of us agree that the dice really destroy that entire game.
I, honestly, the dice thing is one of the reasons why I really like it, and this will come up more when we start talking about miss mechanics in like how do you deal with them. Draw steel has that really neat thing where you straight up don't miss. You can sometimes fail a check, but in terms of combat, you don't miss. I loved how Edge of the Empire had such an interesting dynamic between your success and your failure were not binary situations. There were so many different pieces. I also like that it's not a level-based system. Level-based systems are fine. They're good. They're a very easy common language everyone understands because everyone's played a video game and they kind of get that. But the way that Edge of the Empire allowed you to point by things, that was really, I think, one of the first games that I really delved into that used that. I know you guys in the past had played L5R 4th edition, also on here, a lot, but for me, it was one. I'm also a big Star Wars fan, but
Okay.
it was really the dice. I know you guys your group didn't mesh with the dice mechanics very well, but
No.
I love the dice mechanics, and I love the way that difficulty was not static, difficulty was rolled, and that was really, really a nice thing for me.
Yeah, I like Edge of the Empire just because, yeah, it wasn't class based. It was more skill based. You could kind of you unlock those archetype templates, and that would open up a tree that you could break down. It's just at the core of those dice. It was like, come on, guys, you really could have simplified this, but not terrible. Just yeah, maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
Wouldn't would
I
wouldn't
get the
wouldn't be
feeling
my favorite,
if they had figured out a more elegant solution, similar to like what Draw
right?
Steel did with kind of like their power rolls, I feel like you guys would have liked it even more. But for me,
Sure.
not a deal breaker. I know you guys don't enjoy it, but I do have another group that did.
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I,
Well,
I I subject them to it
I think
on
that's what
occasion.
we're I think that's what we always say though too, is always like since Star Wars was your favorite setting, you were able to run a game that was interesting in it. So it was like even though the game was like, ugh, at least we could find our fun despite the dice and whatnot here. Let's see here. Who do we have? We got people joining in the chat. It's the Bear crew again here. We got Jess, Mike Percival, Bear himself, Sven. What's going on? And Mr. Doc Flamingo, who just started playing in his game on Mondays. There, he printed his own. What was it here? Where are you? Days of High Adventure. which interesting. We'll see how it goes. It's a fantasy game, so right off the bat, a lot of us are like, "Oh man, that's a little bit uphill for us." We'll see. We've played a lot of fantasy, so let's see here. Best lore, Dresden Files. Were you a big fan of those books?
I I've kind of fallen off at this point, but I got
Right.
all the way through, I think, his second to last book. I enjoy kind of like the world that they build, but for me, the reason why I really enjoyed the lore is something that it was between this book and Atomic Robo were the 2 that I really liked
Hmm.
because they used examples from the source material as a way to teach the game and how everything works. It's
Yeah,
probably my favorite way that RPGs do that in an established property. It's how,
it
like, this is what happened in the book. This is how this situation has been broken down. It's like the old Darth and Droids webcomic way back when, which
yeah.
redid the entirety of episode 1, I believe, as a what was it? As a Saga edition game.
Oh Lord. Best. I'm not sure about best art for Phoenix Dawn Command. I will say this though, Phoenix Dawn Command out of all of these is like my heartbreaker because that one was really cool. Card based. You had a deck that you pulled a hand during every scene, and that would tell you how everything turns out. So there wasn't any surprises. But the big thing was is you leveled up by dying. So there was a lot
Yep.
of cool heroic sacrifice in it that made it really flipped playing the character on its head because in so many games the character's like this investment and when they die you're like oh no oh god I gotta start all over and this it's like no you died you're going to level up but you have to choose it correctly because there were times where I was like all right I sacrificed my character to do this and then it's like oh shit the mission is still going they're missing out on
Mhm.
being there despite me doing this big heroic thing to give them kind of a boost it just it changed the pacing of the usual kind of fantasy tropes that made it really cool. That's yeah, of because what's his name? Who did that? That was Keith Baker, right? The guy that did
Keith Baker, yep. Eberron,
Eberron. Yeah,
which basically got a major book published along with how well his the tarot game that he made did. And those two things kind of like and the fact that Phoenix Dawn Command, I'm pretty positive he lost a not insignificant amount of money on it just
yeah,
from the sheer volume of stuff that needed to be printed.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's
uh,
unfortunate. If I could find a copy of it, I'm going to definitely grab it up. That's one that I'd like to play again at some point here.
yeah, it's a for me the thing with it is it's not a realistic game in terms of like the artwork style. It's a very like art deco. Things are very blocky, things are very straight lines, but it
Yeah,
had such an evocative style of art for
yeah,
what they were doing that it's something where still the way that those cards look like, whenever I see that artwork pop up somewhere else, I'm just like, I know where someone took that from. That is from Phoenix Dawn Command, and that's one of
yeah.
the reasons why I really enjoyed that specific artwork.
Yeah, it's kind of like a stained glass look to things. It reminds me a lot of how in a lot of RuneQuest things look like they're made out of mosaic tiles because it gives it
Yes.
that Bronze Age feeling to a lot of the stuff. So yeah, for sure. I think you jumped the gun here on best mechanics. Draw steel's good. We have yet to discover if it's the best mechanics. The mechanics, however, are we haven't come across any situations we have we've played a lot of RPGs and sometimes we play them where the whole table stops and everybody's heads in a book trying to figure out what the hell's going on. We haven't had that problem yet. So
Yeah, and I
even
will
the
say at
cat's gotten
least part of
opinion.
that is definitely Codex. Um,
Yeah, the
Codex helps
VTT. Yeah,
a lot with that, but I have to say, like, the power roll almost alone gives me like that power roll mechanic is so good for telling this specific kind of story. It is really tailored towards heroic people, heroic actors, people that don't miss. Your hyper competence, your all but a superhero kind of characters. It just works so well to say you didn't miss, but you just didn't get the effect you were hoping for.
Yeah,
in full, and that really, like, helps drive things forward. Things don't miss there. The crafting pieces are a simple and elegant piece. Again, because of what it's trying to emulate. Because it's like if you were trying to make a game where you had a really in-depth crafting system, you would not be playing Draw Steel. Draw Steel is good where it
yeah,
abstracts a lot of the minutia around what you're doing in different ways, and
yeah.
that abstraction, I think, really is to the benefit of the game overall, and a really smart move mechanic-wise.
Well, it keeps the rule book thin too. I think that's the problem too, is you get some of these games where it's like, "Holy shit, this is dense." Like, do we
Yeah.
really need this many rules for things? And I like point out to some of these. Let's see here. I brought it up just the other day when I was on in Bear's channel here. Errant is like it's this thin little book, but this thing is full with. I mean, it's hard to see on this. I'm the size of a postage stamp right now, but this thing is full of rules. But it's only like 230 pages. That's it. There, but you get some of these rule books now that are just. It's like a phone book, and you're like, man, I don't want to get like a bachelor's degree to play this game. I just don't need that in my life. Draw Steel, however, we will get back to it since that's our current Friday campaign. We're going to delve a little
Yep.
bit more into it. A lot of people had questions last when I brought it up last show. They were like, "What's Draw Steel? What the hell is this?" And it's like, good. This is what this show's about. It's about talking about these weirdo games that like you almost never hear about. Fate, biggest personal impact.
Yep.
Explain
And
that.
this is one which is something that I'm fairly positive I've never told you guys, but so the
Sure.
Dresden Files, your story, was sort of the first thing I ever ran that wasn't D&D or a D&D clone.
Hmm.
Um, and with that, I had never really
Oh, these
run
even better.
a lot of RPGs in general. I didn't know how to build a story. I didn't know how to create a setting. I didn't know like what questions to ask my players before a game. And the way that Fate has you collaboratively build your characters, has you collaboratively build your world together, gives fantastic advice for how to break down story beats, was really where I learned in many ways how to at least put together a bare structure of a story. I'm still not the greatest GM. I'm not someone that can like really throw together like an entire campaign on the fly. I run out of steam. I run out of steam frequently, as Paul will be able to tell you. But
Yeah.
Fate is the Fate toolkit and the ideas within the Fate core system, which is free or pay what you, not free, it is pay what you want. The Fate core system
Yeah,
really
a lot
gave
of bums are
me
gonna take it for free.
yeah.
That's usually what that
Um
translates to.
and you know, there's a fascinating article about why it is pay what you want and why that the only reason that it's on Drive Through RPG at all is because it is Drive Through RPG literally like months before Fate Core was releasing, told Fred Hicks that yes, like we're implementing a beta right now for pay what you want. Because if it wasn't there, they weren't gonna put it on there because it came
Yeah,
from Fudge. They were very much like everything that comes from Fudge is Creative Commons work. We
yeah,
don't actually own this. Like this is just the next iteration of Fudge.
yep. Let's see here. James, Jesus, did you change your name, James? It used to just be DM James. Now it's James Hawkwind of Hyperborea. I mean, the guy talks about Hyperborea about everything. However, we've had great discussions about L5R. We'll get to that. We're just kind of going across here. But yeah, Fate. Yeah, I'm still pissed off about that Umdar. That would have been a book I
I
actually bought for Fate because
uh,
it's basically Masters of the Universe that probably actually has Masters of the Universe rules in it because the first one they wrote was in the accelerated version, I think, the
so
Fate
the
Accelerated or
first
something like that.
the first one was kind of like a Worlds of Fate. So it was a smaller, shorter book. I think
Yeah,
I don't know the exact page count, but I actually did buy Umdar because it really looks like it is in many ways the best version of Fate for a whole lot of people. It
yeah,
is balancing the way that most people are playing RPGs with the Fate sensibilities. It's using the new streamlined systems that they had with Fate Condensed, because Umdar is not a Fate core game; it is a Fate condensed game. Their naming conventions also reason why I feel like Fate never really took off the way that it could have, but it did for a while.
Right. Well, I think that was the thing. What is it? They were selling more forged in the dark shit than
Yeah,
anything else. So yeah, and that
yeah. All of
we'll
their
get
other
to that when we
lines
discuss the
got better.
overrated section here. My overrated is definitely Blades in the Dark. That one, ooh. I was skeptical about Doc's game because it's a D6 game where ones take away successes. What's worse is Forged in the Dark, where you need a 6 to succeed on anything, and it's like I've seen people roll like 12d6 and not get a 6, and it's like I have this many dice. I spent all these resources and almost bankrupted my character for failure. It's just like that's just the way it goes, you know.
See me, I am really really interested in that one. I in terms of in that system, and I know it doesn't work with us for Blades in the Dark because as a group we tend not to like to play kind of like failures of characters. In terms of like, I'm thinking Only War was also a game that we kind of bounced off of because it was like, all right, I'm the best shooter in this infantry squad, and I have a 30% chance to hit the
Yeah,
broadside of a bar.
yeah, yeah. I was
Good
like, yeah,
fucking luck to
I'm a
us.
sharpshooter and my ballistic skill is below half, and you're like,
Yeah,
why?
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think
that's
that no, that's a good call because that's always a problem with me is like there has to be a base competency level, and that's why I
mhm.
really dislike D20s because it's like you have this wild swing where it's like even though I have these high pluses, I still have such a huge percent chance to miss, and that's why I was laughing when people were telling like well one person in specific in our group was telling me in Dungeon World, well really you're only good at one thing, and I'm like you have a 50-50 chance at succeeding at the things you're bad at. You have a +3, which means like you have only like a 20% chance of failure without any bonuses towards anything else you're doing. So it's
Yep.
just like, don't sit here and tell me that you're really only good at one thing because you're full of shit. Go play D&D where it's like at first level, you're missing 60% of the time. It's ridiculous. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's why I like Traveler too, because it's another thing where it's like out the gate, you start off, all right, I'm a competent guy right out the box. We can just get going. You don't have to do the, I'm a fumbling kid and I got to role play this for 6 weeks or whatever until we finally level up once or twice. And then I can actually start doing things. So overhated fifth edition.
Yep.
You're gonna have
And
to defend
I
that, I
know this is
suppose.
yeah, this
I don't
isn't
really
I know
I haven't played it a whole lot. That's the thing. I'm not one of
yeah.
those guys. I'm in my phase now where I'm just kind of like, man, I'm fucking done with D&D in general. And it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with 5e. It has a lot to do with these weird holier than thou OSR weirdos. Like I like Hyperborea. I like games like that where they took the system and improved it because that's really what it is. It's the first game and people are like you have to play it like how it was originally written. And it's like it's terrible. These
Yeah.
guys didn't know what they were doing. They're the first guys to do it. That'd be like, you have to go back to those old cars that didn't have seat belts, a roof, and had those weird like bicycle tires on them. That's what you could only drive that. It was the perfect car, forged by Hephaestus himself. And you're like, sure, dude, what that's what you say. But overhated 5e.
Yeah.
It is hated. Why do you think it's
Exactly.
overhated?
And I think it gets too much heat because I don't think there are problems with the rule system. Like you'll notice it's not on the like the high levels up at the top of the screen. Um I think it gets more hate than it deserves though, mm, in terms of it as a game. In terms of it as a market leader, it deserves all the hate it gets. But in terms of as a just a pure game, I think it's a fine. I think it's a serviceable game. They made a lot of things really simple and easy, but it's kind of it does feel very flat, especially for martial characters. They did some stuff in the 2024 update to make it, D&D 5.5 they're now calling it, to make it even better for martials, which is nice. But I think the reason why I don't hate it as much is because it is the market leader in some ways, so it does give people that are being introduced to the hobby, uh, kind of like your first dictionary in terms of how to speak the language of RPGs. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the best dictionary, but it's often the first one they get. So
Yep.
it gives a lot of people like that common like language. Like, how do you talk about things? Unfortunately, because it is the market leader and because it's structured in a very specific way, it can like really kind of screw things up as well in terms of like how and what kind of stories do you tell.
Yeah.
And
So
and
now
then
we're all right. Go ahead.
yeah, I was
There
gonna
you
pop into the next one is
There you
underrated,
go.
which is
Yeah,
13th Age.
I was gonna say yeah, and it leads into underrated, which is interesting because 13th Age was made by one of the designers for third edition D&D and one of the designers for fourth edition D&D, my personal favorite, which
Yeah.
is odd because a lot of people were like, I explained this in the last, I've talked about it forever, where people were complaining about it's a video game or whatever, and no, it's not, guys. It's more of a strategy game, but at least it was cohesive and the rules were interesting. Draw Steel has done some cool simplification with it, and it's kind of like a spiritual successor for it, and I think that's probably why it hit really well with the group. So James is saying Model T or die. It's true. He's old school like that. So
Also a person not a fan of the runes in Edge of the Empire.
yeah, it's like I said, a lot of us, yeah, we've talked about it, and it's like because for the love of God, we tried. Everybody here is a big fan of Star Wars RPGs, and they're like, "Oh, cool, new Star Wars." This is so so 13th Age. What about it do you think makes it underrated? Is it just because it's from Pelgrane? Because it's an odd fit, that Pelgrane does it because
Yeah.
they're mostly that's Robin Laws and Ken Hite, and those guys
Hmm.
do very like story games, not like the story games that some of these old school jerk offs who are like, you just telling campfire tales. It's like, no, it's a very structured drama to it. Like their whole gumshoe system is pretty much they
Hmm.
didn't like the fact that you could fail an investigation role in an investigative narrative, and then you're
Yep.
like, well, we're going to
Yeah.
be putzing around for an hour and a half while I try to make sure you guys succeed on a roll to get a clue that might push you in the right direction. It's like, no, no, you're competent
Yeah.
investigators. You don't roll investigation skills, you only roll your actions. So it's like if you're in a combat or you're in a chase or something like that, then you're rolling dice. But if you're investigating, you're picking up the clues. There is no missing the clues. It's a sharp system. So for them to come out with their own pretty much D&D is what it is. It's
Hmm.
from what I remember, I played 13th Age I think
Yeah.
twice, and it's like D&D for the most part. Why
Yeah.
do you think it's
Very much
underrated?
so. I think it's underrated because if you're looking for a game that gets kind of between the narrative style gaming of something like Fate with something like Powered by the Apocalypse and something like 5e, it, 13th Age is almost like designed for that grouping. It also, for me, works exceptionally well because I have, we'll talk about like GM challenges later, but I have players that really just need tactical levers that they can pull in order to feel satisfied. I have other players that need to craft interesting backgrounds and to be able to do different things. And 13th Age really basically lets you take a lot of what you know from traditional D20 fantasy, gives you enough levers to kind of pull on things to make combat really tactical and satisfying. But the way that you build your characters, the way that you have different selections, so even if you have a party of nothing but elven rangers, each one of them can be very unique and very different.
Right.
And yeah,
Overrated. This one was the knife in the heart for me because I'm a bit. I've been always been singing my love songs for Masks. However, from what you told me, it's like I could see why you think that. No, why
yeah,
did you put Masks in the
and
overrated section?
overrated. This one I put here because I lurk around on our Reddit on our RPG, and every time someone asks for a superhero game, Masks is like the one that people bring up. It's the one that everyone says, "Oh yeah, definitely do Masks," and that kind of thing. And there are like maybe I think like three of us total who every time we see is just like, if you're looking for specifically this type of game, you know, masks will fit. If you are looking for a standard superhero game where you're going to run around and punch things, like you're going to want to look at something else.
Yeah,
And
and that
that's the only reason. I think Masks is a fantastic Powered by the Apocalypse game and a
yeah,
fantastic emulation of things like Young Justice or Teen Titans.
eh,
It's just when you get past that,
there is
it
no
is a
past that.
game. Yeah, it is a game that has an opinion about the story that you are going to be telling with it. And
Right.
if you're not doing that, then you've kind of broken the game.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, that's why you cannot play any superhero game with Masks. Masks is a coming of age story.
Hmm.
That's it. You're not playing
Yep.
regular superheroes at all. This is you're playing teens for the most part who happen to be superheroes. So you're playing archetypes. So you might
Yep.
be playing the monstrous who's having problems because as a teen, it's like how are you going to get a date when you look like some kind, you look like Man Thing or something like that. You're like, well, shit. But yeah, nobody's made, I think, a powered by the apocalypse superhero system that could be a good catch-all. Superhero systems in general,
They're
it's
hard.
it's hard to find a good one. Like I usually just default to aberrant because it's easy to roll. I can
Hmm.
grok that in my head. I think I brought it up on the last one, champions, stuff like that, where you're like, here's 2,000 points, and people just sit there and they plug it into their NORAD ICBM launch computer that breaks down all the numbers and like here's your most efficient way to make whatever. And it's like I don't want to play like that. I like tactical strategy games, but I don't want to play superhero battle tech is what it would be, where you're just punching each other through buildings and you're sitting there doing like a 4 hour combat. I'm like, no, that's not what superheroes is to me. It's more Greek theater. But yeah, no, masks I could see it, but well, the problem is you're hanging out on Reddit. I think I brought that up. There's a lot of brain damaged people there. They're going to say play masks if you want to play a coming of age story. Yes, Night's Black Agents, criminally overlooked. Agreed. Night's Black Agents
Yep.
is really cool because they were like, okay, guys want gumshoe, but they want a little bit more action with their investigation. We're going to do Jason Bourne hunts vampires. You're going to be
Yep.
not just competent, hyper competent guys, but you're fighting the supernatural. So it's like you need to be because they will mess you up. And I like that in it, the vampires don't all follow the same mythology. They give you a
Hmm.
list where it's like it could be this. They might not be able to cross running water. They give you a whole list of them, and it's like you pick these, and they'll figure it out as they play. So you can't just come right out.
Yep.
They don't have monster manualitis where people are like, oh, I know
Hmm.
this. We need a +1 sword at least. If we use mare's milk in this, we can kill it instantly. Bleh. Nope, you got to figure it out. Every vampire is different. So,
Yeah.
but
And
why do you
there
think it's
was
criminally overlooked?
similar reasons. You hit upon a lot of them. Like it's Gumshoe, which as like a whole group, the investigations in Gumshoe have worked every time that I've never run the game, but every time I'm a player in it, it makes sense. Everything works as it's supposed to. You have a varied team. Different people get to shine at different times, but it is very much I do like action in a lot of my games. And and Jason Bourne killing werewolves and vampires is great. And it's also great that, sometimes the plan has not come together and you need to just make guesses and kind of hope that what you're doing is going to be effective.
Has aged well. I agree because that was on my top 10 for RPGs was L5R 4th edition. James can attest to that. I talked to him on a stream one time. I think I forwarded it to Samurai Mike because I was just talking about how much I loved playing in an L5R campaign and we were just talking about you know like oh man L5R was great. Oh, we did this. It's L5R, it's never, whenever people talk about their campaigns, it's never, oh, I had a guy who did this much damage. It's this massive tale about where the characters went, who died, what we lost, and it's just you get that story from it. It's yeah, and it is kind of a class-based system, a little bit of wiggle room in it
Yeah.
though. But I think it's one of those RPGs that has a built-in kind of guide of how you're supposed to role play because it's set in a very
Mhm.
specific, it's almost like Pendragon where it's like, do you know chivalry? You're going to need to because you can't be an asshole if you're a knight. Just like in this, you can't be an asshole if you're a samurai, otherwise you're going to die real quick.
Yeah.
So why
And
do you believe it's aged well?
I think for a lot of the reasons that you have talked about, I like the roll and keep system. I think it's a really
Yeah.
elegant way to like show how effective your character can be. It's a really interesting way for you to build your different characters. I personally, before I ever interacted with Legends of the Five Rings as an RPG, I was reading the books when I was a kid.
Oh wow.
I really enjoyed like those random novels because they were like I think the first exposure I had to something like that world at the time. And so it stuck with me in a lot of ways. I think something that has aged well with it is that it is a game that is trusting you to be an adult about it. It's a game that's trusting you to role play the game correctly. It's trusting the GM to punish you when you don't role play the game correctly. And it's a little bit and that's something that I really appreciate about it. It treated you with a respect that a lot of games that I feel like some games now like lean away from because they're like, all right, how do we create the biggest tent? This was a very focused tent. Um, yeah, and
Yeah, I
I
think
also
yeah, I
still
think you
like
hit the nail
swords.
on the head with that one. It's we're all agreeing to play this. You can't have any wacky, Catman show up or half demon or whatever bullshit from D&D and go, "Well, this is me. This is part of my persona, and if I can't play it, well then you're not playing. I'm sorry."
Well, I
It's
was
okay
actually
to be exclusionary, because it's like we're playing this specifically. We're going to play Pendragon. Do you want to play Pendragon? No. We'll see you next time. You don't you don't need to have people in who are like, I I need a salad bar at the steak place or I'm not showing up. It's like, then you're not showing up, brother. That's just the way it goes. You were saying?
I was actually going to talk about fifth edition and the way that they mechanicized the a lot of the role playing things that fourth just told you to do. Like fourth ed told you like this is how like you should be conducting yourself and how you should be behaving with honor, etc. Fifth
Right.
edition with the strife dice basically made it so that it was mechanicized. So it was kind of like it was now a mechanic about when your character freaks the F out. And that's something where
Precisely.
like there are reasons why like if someone's never interacted with anything like this, I can understand, that strife dice helping, but I think that, you know, asking people to read the book for the game that they're playing is not too high of a bar for us to ask them to do. And I feel like that's something that you see in a lot of places where people don't read the book that they're playing in. Or that could just be a me thing, and instead it's just what we give to people.
Uh Quick on the roll and keep though, one thing I do like about it is it almost lets the player control their target number because you can do those
Yeah.
called raises. You get that level of push your luck where you get hyper competency to where you're like, I can fight two guys at once. And you look at your dice, you're like, I can easily kick the shit out of two guys at once. Yeah, you get those situations where it's like, yeah, if you're hyper focused, you could do really cool stuff. Yeah, that's really awesome. This one's a little weird here. Needs a new edition for 316 Carnage Beyond the Stars or Amongst the Stars.
Yeah, that's just
Why do they
because
need that?
I enjoy that game. It's a really small little game. It is
Yeah,
quite a it's not like a full-on silly game, but if people like Helldivers, if people like Starship Troopers, if people
yeah.
like pretending that they're an Imperial Guardsman, 316 Carnage Amongst the Stars is like easily like if you're looking for a quick game to play, that game will work for you fairly
Yeah, we
well.
we played. Yeah, I think you ran it at one of those little mini cons that we did, and it was fun because it was just like,
Yeah.
all right, you pick your loadout, we're all dropping in, and whoever survives, you might get ranked up, and then like somebody will be the sergeant next time, and it was cool because as you gained rank, you gained responsibilities. So it was like once somebody became an officer, they could call in like artillery strikes and other stuff, and it's like, oh, this is really cool. There was just fun little stuff because it's very beer and pretzels, but
Yes.
it's not goofy. That's the thing. A lot of beer and pretzels games, people are like, oh, Kobold ain't my baby, or any of these where you just don't take it seriously. This one, it's like, yeah, you don't take it seriously, but it's a war game. So it's like you can get killed like that.
Yes.
Because I think we went in, I forget if we fought bugs or zombies or whatever,
It
but it's
was
one of those
bugs.
games where we're just hosing down hordes of stuff. And you
You
have all
you
these
guys are doing
ridiculous
Starship
weapons you could pick
Troopers.
from. Yeah. But it was cool because later on, like, yeah, you could unlock, like, oh, we want a big tank or any of that stuff. It was pretty, yeah, it is. pretty much Helldivers the RPG. It's just that came out and I can't even remember.
Long time ago.
I've got that on the shelf somewhere. That's Gregor Hutton. He's a Scottish
Yep.
guy. That's the same guy who wrote Remember Tomorrow,
Hmm.
which is a great cyberpunk storytelling game. That's the one where your three stats are ready, willing, and able, and that's it.
Hmm.
Like you just make a character really quick. The character sheet is like it's smaller than an index card, and I like the fact that you could play the character, and then if you got bored, you could put the character in the center and be like anybody else can pick it up and play it later if they want. And that way, you could have like this rotating cast of characters who live inside of whatever cyberpunk dystopia you create with it. Reap. That is what's his name? That's the local guy.
Spencer
He does
Campbell.
Spencer Campbell. He does all of the like four-letter games because what did he do? He did Reap, Hunt, all of that's what they are. They're all like based
Reap
on four
Hunt
letters.
Nova. One of his first
Rune,
games was
Void.
Light before he figured out that four letters is what I do. He also has Slayers and Dragon Slayers, which are also really neat games. So it's not usually my thing, but one, I love Spencer Campbell's designs. Games are a little bit harder to run for me because my brain doesn't work exactly the same way as his does, is my understanding, in terms of
Sure.
like I'm not a game designer
Right.
and like I'm not in his world thinking about the worlds that he's playing in. So it can be a little bit tricky to like sustain a campaign. But that's a personal thing. Like the game gives you what it needs and then just
Right.
tells you to like you can make the rest of this shit up. It's fine. Go do it.
Yeah,
Um
there's definitely loose tolerances with his games. His games are very low dice, low numeric difference. It's almost like the new XCOM where you're just very much like move, shoot, or whatever. You've got two action points or this to spend. It's very like simple, small mechanics, but with a very kind of evocative setting, depending on which one you're playing. He did a solo journaling game that I picked up called Rigged. I think that's the one where you're playing pretty
Rigged,
much like
yes.
a net runner
He
where you're doing hacking and all that stuff, and it uses a deck of cards and your stack is a Jenga
Mhm.
stack, and you have to
Yep.
pull from that every time you take like net feedback from black ice and stuff like that. And if it collapses, then your guy goes brain dead. So he's got wild ideas. He's always fun to go to at Gen Con and look through because he's got all of his little books set up over there.
Yeah.
But
So
what's
Reap is
specific
actually an
about Reap?
offshoot of Rune.
Okay,
Rune was his solo Souls-like game.
okay,
Both of these are just games that you play by yourself. Rune is very much like you're playing a oh goodness, what was it? An Elder Rings game where it's kind of like you
yeah,
are exploring this grim world, trying to like bring it back. Reap is a similar but different game. Takes a lot of the same ideas, except you are a necromancer. The world has died, and you are trying to avenge it. So you are basically like exploring like these blasted wastelands, raising the dead like with you to try and extract vengeance. And it's
okay.
just a really neat kind of like idea for a solo game. It's a small one. It fits well. It's something I haven't played a full campaign of, but it's something where it's just like I would get rid of so many other games before I got rid of that one.
Yeah, current game. We'll get into Draw Steel in a second here. It's going a little long in this, but this is nice though. I think a lot of these, because what was it? I think James popped on and he's like, he recognized two of these games. So that's good. Out of like the 15 on here, we're talking about
I've
stuff
I've got
that's new
some
for people.
weird picks, people.
There's some odd shit. Yeah, we'll get to Dialect. That was another one that was on here that I was like, what? But we'll talk about it.
I love
It's
that
really
game of Dialect.
it's interesting. Jess Laws here. I want to play Run Shadows of Estrin. That one kind of broke our hearts. That was one that Jer ran, and he ran a module, and it was the rules of the game that really kind of was like, eh. The
I,
setting is cool. The artwork is very evocative because it's a bunch of French painters. So it was like I remember when Tom and Bill and all of them were picking up copies at Gen Con. That guy Nellyhan was painting on the end
mhm.
papers, like on the inside. He would sit, he'd be like, come back in a half hour. And he did this enormous painting just on the inside of the book. And you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. And I told him, I was like, don't ever sell that. And I told him, I was like, if you're ever selling that, I'll buy it because that's beautiful. But the mechanics were shit. And it's like, it was another one of those almost like Degenesis where it's like the art's beautiful. This is really cool. And it's a cool, evocative setting. The mechanics are kind of meh, and the adventures are kind of shit. It's like, God damn it. Like one of those where you're
Yeah.
like, they were this close, you know?
Yeah.
But
Although I will say, I also think it does come down to our preferences. Like, we were not, again, very hyper competent individuals in that game. And I feel like that may have colored it a little bit because I think we were expecting, I think it was an expectation issue and at least a part of it with Shadows. Because we were running that through that as kind of like a module when instead it seems like they were completely unconnected, really. And so like, and it felt like there wasn't really connective tissue between them because there wasn't any.
who are you running Daggerheart for?
I'm running it for my New Jersey crew.
How's that working out? Because Daggerheart's one of those where it's like, if you read it or if you kind of run it as written, it's awful.
I
Unless
have not
you have
felt
to
that way at all.
you have to use the sidebars where it's like, oh, okay, there's squares for distance, all this stuff. Because for me, it's like,
Oh, distances and stuff. Yeah, I'm playing on a VTT. We did a couple of their optional rules off the bat because we're just like
yeah,
they have been playing in person on a monthly game that they've been doing, and they did it for like I think they did it for like nearly a year.
oh wow,
And so like I was just running it like on a VTT for them.
right,
But because of that, like yeah, we figured out what works and what doesn't. There are it's a strange game in some ways because I mentioned how I prefer the balance between narrative and tactics and traditional fantasy D20 that 13th Age strikes. Daggerheart feels like it's aiming at that same zone,
right,
but wound up somewhere completely different.
yeah,
There are elements of it that I think are really fun and really cool, but I think I think it really, for me, highlights that Daggerheart is a game really about the story that the GM is trying to tell.
oh no,
And because of that, it's kind of like if you've got a good GM, Daggerheart's going to sing. If you got
yeah,
a medium GM, Daggerheart's going to be fine. If you have a bad GM, Daggerheart's going to hurt
yeah, yeah,
because there's supports in the places where an experienced GM like knows where and what to pull on. You know, I've been GMing for a while. I know where to kind of like pull things up and just say, "Hey, like we like the rules don't say this, but I'm going to do this." And
hmm
there's a lot of that. And it's
yeah,
it's a very much Daggerheart's a toolkit, and you just got to
yeah.
treat it as a toolkit.
I mean, it would help if the assholes would run it on their fucking show so people could see it being played. But that's one of the reasons why I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to put another dollar towards this until they run it on their goddamn show. Just because they
They
took the
have.
bag and well, they ran
They've
it
done it
once,
like 3 or
right?
4 times. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. They're about to do a second season of their Daggerheart show. Like Age
I
of
thought they're
Umbra
running.
is like a
I thought
big
they're
thing.
running 5e right now.
Yeah, yeah. So Critical Role is a big enough thing where they have multiple GMs doing multiple things at this point. They
Okay,
are running a 5e game, but they also have Age of Umbra, which is their specific Daggerheart one. And then they've also been partnering with a bunch of other streamers to do like other Daggerheart content on their
right.
platforms.
Okay,
But a lot of it is kind of like it's very much if they were trying to tell the story they're working on in Daggerheart, it would have simply fallen apart. Daggerheart is really a thing that like it is very much player driven. The challenge with that is your players aren't driven to do things, to like seize things, and to go after things.
right.
It doesn't necessarily have the levers that other games might have to drag that player along to be like, all right, come on,
Well,
like
that
do
that's the
not do not refuse the call to adventure.
that's the problem with the player. Then that's the
Exactly.
problem. I think a lot of systems get blamed for that, and it's like I try to tell people, I get it that we're nerds and that we're trying to usher something in and try to pull something out of people. At some point, you realize some people are beyond saving. They are just absolute dullards. They don't want to engage with anything. They just want to show, like, throw the math rocks and scratch their id by lighting stuff on fire and killing things with swords. That's it. And it's like, that's cool. There's groups for that. You can go play Pathfinder. It's cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Nothing against you. Just I don't want to do that. I did that shit all through my teen years. I don't need to do it anymore. So it's cool. There's another tent for you. So moving on from fucking Daggerheart, because I'm sure we're boring people to death and tears with Daggerheart here. Your first game was West End Star Wars, which you don't have to do a whole
Didn't
lot of explaining. A lot of people in the audience have played West End Star Wars and they love West End Star Wars.
didn't even realize I was playing an RPG. I was in third grade at the time. Friend asked me to come over to his house, said, "Hey, I've got all this cool Star Wars stuff. Do you want to see it?" And literally he ran me through a module where I like started off as a bounty hunter, grabbed a rocket launcher and blew up an ATSD.
There you
And
go.
that was my introduction to RPGs. Didn't play again after that point until I hit high school, but it was a good time.
Doc Flamingo is saying, didn't WotC pull 5e from Critical Role because they're starting their own live play show? I did see that WotC was doing their own live play show. You know, God
Yeah,
bless them and good luck.
but they did
Just
not
saying.
pull the licensing, but there's all kinds of things that I feel like we're not privy to. There was some discussion about how like they may have cut a deal with like some of the largest streamers to allow them to continue playing, but then all the blowback from everything else, they didn't change the SRD the way that people were afraid that they were going to,
Yeah.
but everyone should keep an eye on it because,
Yeah.
it's one of those things with corporations, like, oh,
Yeah.
our bad. We're so sorry. We're not going to do the thing. And they just wait for temperatures
Yeah.
to cool down and
Right.
then they just put it in again.
Yeah.
And it's
Because
just a
you know
question of
who's
are they going to succeed on the rope a dope or not? That's
right.
the
Yeah.
real question.
You know who's really cheap to get to work to rewrite the legalese of things is lawyers. I hear they're real cheap. They have a real low hourly rate. So, you know, if they rewrote the legalese for something, that means they put an investment in it. And everybody did the smart thing, which was bail. Bail on WotC and the OGL. And, you know, that's it. You know, they can have 5e, they can have their AI GMs and all that shit. That's good luck to them. Moving on. Dialect now.
Yep.
What?
I thought Dialect was a beautiful kind of little story game. It's a game where I don't think that there were dice in it at all, but
I
there
don't
were
think so.
cards and words that we used. You throughout the course of the game, you invent a language together,
Yeah.
slang, if you were. And then in the different epochs of the game, you see how that language evolves, and then you also see how that language dies and dies off. And it's a very interesting experience. It's not my
Did you did,
favorite game,
did you only
but
play it that one time at Origins?
I have played it a second time, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, it was really a neat experience that I think is it's and especially like I came at this at the lens of like what is a game so unlike D&D that I want to shove in people's face. And it's kind of like a fake game, there's a lot of things like D&D to it, but if you want to see something completely out of left field that I feel like still has the structure to allow you to succeed in having a game experience and telling a story, Dialect's the one that I absolutely like think so.
Sure. Okay. Well, now we've got our introduction to you. We can get rid of this.
It
Right?
only took an hour.
Well, only took an oh yeah. I was like, well, that filled up some time. I'm trying to keep these, yeah, trying to keep these light. We'll probably go about 90 minutes. We'll see. I'm trying to keep them on task because I've been listening to some shows and some shows I'm just cutting out because like they go for 5 hours and they're everywhere. I'm like, where the hell are we now? What are we talking about? Are we still talking about RPGs? Have we delved into politics now? You know, I hate that. Anyway, so where are we here? Draw Steel. What got us into playing Draw Steel?
I think I was really interested in it because I had been seeing Matt Colville's name around all these 5e supplements. And
Okay.
then when the OGL fiasco hit, Draw Steel, which at the time was just called MCDMRPG.
Right. Yeah.
um, that was one of the games that kind of was being announced out of it. It was Project Black Flag that became Tales of the Valiant, which is honestly like I think that might have been their biggest problem with that.
You feel
um
attacked. How did I attack you there, James? I didn't say that Hyperborea is terrible. I love Hyperborea. Best version of AD&D there is. It replaced AD&D altogether, for me at least.
um, but yeah, I think that it was something where I was really interested because of a lot of the ideas that he had and the opinions he had about GMing and fantasy RPGs and what makes a good one. Um,
Okay.
and so I started following a lot of his stuff. The openness that he had to problems that they ran into as they were designing kind of sold me on it, because it wasn't even the solutions that he was coming up with, it was the thought process behind the answer, which is also a
Mhm.
reason why I loved Edge of the Empire. I heard I can even tell you the exact episode. The Order 66 podcast, episode number 163 of the old version before they restarted it, had
Okay.
Hurling Sturchy, Jay Little, and I'm blanking on the last person's name that were all the designers of Edge of the Empire. And they talked
Okay.
about what their idea behind those dice were and why it was. And so because of the thought process there, like I understood what he was going for in the game. I was just like, I want to test this out. And then those final versions came out, and I was just like, I can't run this in a VTT right now. Like
Right.
it is so unlike anything else. Like we would have to run it on like Owlbear Rodeo, people having to manually do things, which is something that for our group, like more automation is helpful.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
because we got one guy in Texas who really didn't start off as a role player. He's somebody that I met through World of Warcraft, and I don't think he
mhm.
owns dice. So it's like,
Yeah.
you gotta. That's why the built-in VTT or the custom VTT that they have for Draw Steel, I brought it up in the previous episode called Codex.
Yeah.
Everything's built into it, including all the rule books. There's like a search function in the upper right, and you can just type in
Mhm.
anything you have a question about, and it'll show you where it appears in every book, and you just go boop, you go searching for it. Oh,
Yeah,
there we
it,
go.
it
James
is.
James clarifies. Yeah, he does do 5-hour rambling streams, but you're painting and stuff during that, James. I'm talking, you know, I'm throwing shade everywhere, James. I guess. Who knows? Maybe we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Let's see. I guess we're gonna have to start a promotion campaign for Doc Flamingo's channel and Paul's play. Oh, there you go. DM James. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I believe that is DM James. I believe he is not. He has become fancier with his. He's fully bought into the whole Hyperborea thing. But like I said, great game. It's replaced AD&D. It pretty much that's what it is. The guy went in, streamlined it, and focused it on a setting, so it's nice and powerful. But yeah, Draw Steel. I think what really got me and Jer on board was it was like you were saying he was big on fourth edition, and we were like,
Mhm.
let's do it. You know, I
Yeah.
want to I want to see how it links into that, and yeah, the way that it works out, the combats are nice and dynamic, but they because some of the problem with 4E was you couldn't really build much, you'd have to just take whatever components there were. It was very much like you had to use it was almost like if you've ever seen like a toolkit that's built in Germany, everything's like laid out specifically in a perfect little pattern. They're like the tools have a specific place where they're returned to. Everything has to fit correctly into a nice specific spot, otherwise it doesn't work. Whereas Draw Steel seems to have a little bit of wiggle room. It's like the
Mhm.
AK-47 compared to these the German rifles, where it's like, oh, you get a little bit of sand in it, it's not going to die. It just, it
It,
works.
it goes back to that thing that happened with 4E, which was, 4E, I love a lot of things about it, but one of the things is that you could build a bad character. You could
Yep.
build someone completely ineffectual.
Yep.
And Draw Steel has a number of ways to prevent that specific scenario from happening, which is really nice. Um, Codex has been a big thing. I know that it's kind of like a steep price. If someone's in like financial distress and are looking to play a game, like buying Codex could be tricky for them. But Codex isn't the only way to play Draw Steel. Like they
Right.
specifically have released a lot of free tools on for Owlbear Rodeo, which is kind of like a fully
Mhm.
free like TTRPG VTT that you can use.
Right.
They have a Foundry module that they're supporting now. You can purchase it, but the module itself is also free.
Well,
So
am I
there's a number
crazy,
of really
or
neat
are
things.
the PDFs for both Draw Steel books in with Codex?
they're both in there fully for codex.
Yeah, so I
So
mean, that's actually the cheapest if you're one of these guys who's just like, I only play online. I don't need the paper book. I just want the
mhm,
PDFs. You could just do that because the nice thing about Codex is, unlike Foundry, you don't have to run a private server. It's run through Steam,
yeah.
so you just boot it right up and you can do everything you want. I like the mapping tools for it. I like how it has the built-in
Mhm.
lighting, fancy stuff from Roll20, the multi-layer leveling. That was always cool when we were doing the Wizards Tower, when it was like people would run like up the stairs and then
Yep.
vanish, and you're like, ah, shit. And then on their screen they're seeing the next floor while we're still fighting on the lower level. And I was like, that's cool, you could do things like that. Because I remember Theater of the Mind wise, when I was running you guys through Dungeon World, I had you fight that one illusionist, and I had you guys in 4 separate rooms that looked completely different because, well, he's an illusionist, it's gonna
Mhm.
up everybody's fight looked different, but each room interacted with the other depending on what was happening. And it's like, oh, to have that on a VTT, that's cool for me. I'd like a Theater of the Mind because it's less work. Yeah, it's easier easier for me to handle. But if you're one of those guys that want, well, if you're running a system, I guess, like Draw Steel, that's more strategic or
Tactical.
tactical, you're
Yeah.
going to want it like in that has all those abilities for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think one of the greatest things about 4E, to wax poetic about it, was that wizards were controllers. They weren't, I think it was blasters. Was that the term they used? Or no, they used strikers.
Striker, striker,
Strikers
yeah,
were like sorcerers and that kind of thing, but wizards
yeah,
were controllers. Their spells controlled the battlefield,
yeah,
and that is something that Draw Steel really leans into. Not necessarily with the
yeah.
wizard class, but what they lean into is battlefield control. Movement and forced movement is such a big part of the game.
Well,
And
that was the
Codex does
thing.
make it a lot easier.
We all made our characters completely like devoid of any
Blind.
idea of what anybody else was making. And I was like, oh, great. Bill's another weird caster type because he's what, a void magician or something like that. I forget what the
Yeah,
class is that he's playing,
I
but he's
believe it's Elementalist.
elementalist. Yeah, but he's specialized in void, which lets him do all this teleportation stuff. So
Yep.
we're in these fights and it's like, well, shit, this guy's just going to keep getting away from us. We don't have a whole lot of like ranged combat. Uh, and he was just like, "Oh, that's okay." He just sets up a portal here and a
Yeah,
portal there, and he's like, "If you step through that, you'll go over there." And we were like, "Holy shit!"
yeah,
It changed the whole
yeah,
battlefield. It was awesome.
yeah. It was like I could see that you were getting annoyed because I know that that happened in Lancer too, where you're just like, God
Yeah.
damn, there's one guy that just has a teleportation function and he's zipping all over the place, and we are too slow to catch him, so we're just dealing reliable damage while he's hitting us with like these big like giant line attacks. And
Well,
I
I
know that
think
that one really frustrated you.
yeah. Well, I think that's what I liked about it as compared to Lancer. Lancer was, I think I mentioned it in another stream. It's
Mhm,
Shadow of the Demon Lord BattleTech. That's all it is, and the melee in it sucks. It's awful. Whereas in this, the way they have the kits, since Draw Steel isn't so married to all of the equipment and sitting there counting your
mhm,
beans and being like, I have this many arrows left and all that stupid shit, you pick a kit, which is how you fight. If you're doing cloak
mhm,
and dagger, or dual wield, or if you fight with a pole arm, every fighting style is different and changes things. So with everybody can attack up to 5 away with their base ranged attack. That's like throwing a dagger or stuff like that. It's not great, but any of the long ranged kits, especially with sniper, increases your range. You could go all the way up to 20. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. And that's what I liked playing about the tactician. I didn't even realize how big that was going to be because I get to pick 2 fighting styles. That's enormous.
mhm.
Because I not only do I have the kind of sword and board tanky thing, I have the multiple attack ranged combat that I could fire out to like 13 squares away instead of 5. So it's like, okay, cool. I don't have the problem in Lancer where I'm just this slow plotting guy that needs direct line of sight of every guy and I can only attack up to three squares away or whatever. It's like, no, I've got so much more tactical flexibility in a game that has much simpler mechanics.
Yeah.
Oddly enough,
It
I think that's the elegance of it is the very simple, the 2d10. It lands within there's only 3 different success bands that you look at,
mhm,
and it's all taken care of in the VTT. It makes the combats go really quick, especially if they're like when we were fighting at that pool on the first level of the Delian Tomb. It was like, oh shit, this combat's going to take forever, and then it was like, no, because when you roll initiative, it does sides, but you pick who goes in whatever order you want. It just says whoever can claim the initiative, and anytime we start an event and there's guys piled up, Bill goes whoop, and he just takes it and drops a big template on them. So it was like half the goons were dead in round 1. It's like, Well, that's what they get for standing in a pile. We've got a
That's
wizard in the
something
group.
that I have noticed when you guys win initiative, which is not unfrequently, or infrequently. Wow, uh, they just drop things, and it's just like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
That changed the number of creatures and activations quite dramatically.
Let's
But yeah,
see.
montage tests are something that we only had one of so far. I think that they work out fairly well.
Mhm.
The ability to just call for random tests and understand like where like what does having a tier 1 success or mean? Because everything's a success. So if it's less than 11 is a tier 1 success.
Right.
Is this something easy? Like, does it still happen anyway on a tier 1? Does it still happen with some kind of consequence? Does it not happen? Like, those are kind of like the levels, and then you just kind of like move those around for like, okay, so maybe tier 2 is it succeeds, but at a cost, and maybe tier 3 is the only way that you can get like that high level success.
Right.
And it really, and it does not fit for all games, but
No.
it does dramatically fit if you're supposed to be big heroes.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I like that on the skill checks, especially in the VTT, depending on what you roll. If you don't reveal the highest thing, it stays kind of like
Blacked out.
blacked out. So you're like, ah shit, nobody figured it out. But I mean, it just, yeah, the skills are useful in it. I like that you can spend downtime to learn languages and skills. I like how they made knowing languages a part of all of your downtime activities. Like if
Mhm.
you're crafting something, it's like, or if you're dealing with anything, I think it was like if you're doing any kind of like legal things, if you know the demon language, it helps because they're all about writing contracts. So it's like, oh, we're working on a treaty or working on like a merchant's contract. It's like, well, do you speak that demon language? Because you get a plus to it because you know how to dot your I's and cross your T's. There's just, yeah, they did interesting things that made everything useful. That's the problem with old D&D. I think I talked to people that played a lot, and people were like, "Yeah, just make wisdom your dump stat. It's practically useless." And it's like, huh, I never thought of that. It's for the most part, it's like, yeah, if you're not playing a cleric, it's worthless. It does practically nothing. And it's like, yeah, you have to. That's why a lot of games need to be play tested, and it seems like this one they really beat the shit out of it. And it's good that he had the followers that let him do that. I think you need to build a certain level of traction and then have people play test a game to death. Not just, we played it a few times here, buy it. Throw it up on crowdfund, buy. And then you play it and you're like, God damn it. Like that you played Kingdom Death with us, right? The board game?
Yeah.
You could tell they play tested it to a point. Because the first like armor set or two, you're like, okay, these are useful. And then the ones after it, you're like, these are very specific and don't feel like they were balanced at all. And you could tell they were like, good enough. Send it out. And you're like, oh, that's why I sold it. I was like, I don't want to hang on to this goddamn game. It's not good. It's good to a point. And then you get to the point where it's like, oh, they didn't play test any of this later shit. Just okay.
Yeah. So I think so to speak to Daryl's question here about auto hitting, you can
Girl.
never be so good as to come out unscathed, right? No more so than any other fantasy D20. And I think that there's a couple of things happening here with draw steel that makes that situation not a primary concern. There was a combat that you guys absolutely like cakewalked, but it was an intro battle. It was
Right.
supposed to kind of be a cakewalk. It was this is how the game works in the back and forth. So
Mhm.
it didn't really take up a lot of their things. Um, because here's the other thing, the enemies also don't miss. Like,
Well, that's
I'm
that's what he's saying. Yeah,
like,
you're going to be unscathed. But I think that's what's nice about it is because you have so many of those recoveries that you could
yes.
spend. You have, I forget what it is. It's anywhere between like 6 to 15, depending on the class you're playing, for the number of recoveries, and each one that you use heals a third of your hit points.
Yep.
So it's like you're going to be going through those, and that controls the tempo of it because you're going to want to go from battle to, or well, it's not really battle to battle; it's challenge to
Yep.
challenge because,
Mhm.
and you can get a victory for disarming or avoiding traps, doing a negotiation or whatever like that. But as you build up
Succeeding a quest
victories,
or a job.
Yeah, anything like that. So as you build up the victories, that when you start the next challenge, you get that much for your whatever your resource is, because each class has like a resource that they have to spend to do their heroic abilities. So you get that much more momentum. So if you go into like the big boss fight and you've got like 8 victories under your belt, that's a lot of points you could spend on really cool openers and just kind of get going. Whereas like you look at it and you're like, man, we're down to practically no recoveries. It's probably time to take a downtime or what is it? Is
Oh,
it a rest?
respite.
A
And
respite? Yeah,
and there's a specific reason for that that I want to go into as well, because the respites are something where I feel like they reprogrammed some of our brains, because when you think about it, sometimes it's like, okay, like for D&D, like it's a long rest. Oh, it's a night's sleep. Like, okay, so like what's gonna change if we take a night's sleep like before we go into this castle or something like that? And that's
right.
like, yeah, okay, it feels like a short period of time. Respites and draw steel are there are a couple of requirements. You have to be in a truly safe place. That effectively means you have to be in town. You cannot take a respite in the woods, in the wilds. You have to be in town. And it is a full 24 hours. And I feel like that's a thing that shifts, that thinking where it's like, okay, like, it gets players away from the, okay, like our wizard used up all his spells, which is also not a thing, thankfully, in this game. um the wizard used up all his spells, so we're going to take a long rest so he gets them all back, and then we're going to continue on the adventure. And it's just like, it's like, oh, like, we're taking a sleep. It's kind of like a day's rest, like moving on, so forth. It's almost kind of like it almost gets hand waved a lot of the time, that time is passing. But with Draw Steel, they kind of like hammer that home. It's just like things will happen when you take a respite, because when you take this respite or respite, you will, 24 hours have passed. Things are happening in the world around you that you are not engaging with at this point. It gives you an opportunity to take downtime actions. Like there's a lot of things to do during a respite, and it just kind of like shifts things around in a way that feels very natural and feels very good to kind of balance things out in a way that doesn't happen in Fantasy D20.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way the downtime actions work, where you set a goal and then it becomes a certain amount of achievement points that you have to work on to get. And like something as small as like making a healing potion is only like 40 or 45 or whatever it is, which is nice and simple because you can have a guy. I think that's our rogue is like an alchemist or whatever like that. So
Yep.
because he has the alchemy skill, he gets to add that on top of he's got some ingredients and all that stuff. So it makes it so he can crank them out a little bit faster than usual. But yeah, there's a lot of simple subsystems in it. There's nothing too crazy or advanced. I think it makes it very kind of easy to grok and very easy to manage. So
I think two other things that are important to note are also some things that it it does not take from D&D, that are something that's been coming up lately that I've seen conversations about: the 0 HP bounce house that D&D 5e specifically is. That when you drop to 0, the best thing to do is to heal 1 or 2 hit points, because you're never going to heal enough to like get out of the threat range for something that knocked you down to 0.
right,
But in this game, you go down to 0 and you're bleeding. You're not even downed. You continue to take actions, but taking actions will harm you and will
right,
hurt you. And you can no longer take your maneuver to heal yourself. Someone
right,
else has to heal you. And then when you're down to half your max negative, then you die, and
right.
then you're dead. And
Yeah.
that's all she wrote
Well,
for that
it,
character.
it's nice because if you play it right, you don't have to have somebody be like your heel bitch. When I was
Hmm.
playing at Gary Con, the game that we played, it was like we were getting our asses kicked because it's you're playing like set with 7 people. I only know my brother at the table. Everybody else is doing whatever. One guy was doing okay. He was what was that the monk? He was doing a lot
Hmm.
of like the like
The null.
spinning rating radial attacks and stuff with people around him. but I was playing the paladin where it was like every time I had a strike where I hit guys, I was like, bam, I hit that guy for holy damage, and then somebody within 5 squares or somebody next to the target. I think it was somebody next to the target I hit, got to spend a
Could
recovery.
spend a recovery.
Or actually got
Yep,
to spend one of my recoveries because the paladin has like loads of
a
I had like
ton.
yeah, I had like 15 recoveries. So I was like, I'll just spread these out like candy. So that's what you could do as like the healer. You could, yeah, definitely keep people going. And that's what I did whenever people, yeah, because once you get bleeding, you can't spend the maneuver to use your recoveries. So that's when the healers kind of jump in. But it's not never to the point where you're like, man, because we only have we have the troubadour, and it's like, yeah,
Yep.
he can do some healing to a point because he can play different songs like auras, and then if you end your turn in the aura, he can pick people up to his presence modifier, which is pretty much like your charisma modifier, and those guys can spend a recovery at the end of it at the end of his turn if he wants. So it's like, okay, he could do that if he wants, or he could turn on the one that's awesome, where at the start of each of our turns, when we're in his aura, we get surges, which we can spend to do more damage. And it's like awesome. And those are great
Yep.
for the rogue because he's all built for that when he spends surges.
Yep.
So yeah, this I like that. I like how the classes interact with each other. I'm big on that. That was another thing that I was
Hmm.
big on 4E. I like that you had to build it almost like a football team, or just any kind of sports team. It's like, okay, I'm handling this position. Okay, cool. I can support you by doing this. The collaborativeness between characters. I've played way too much World of Darkness where everybody's like, all right, I got all my cards real close to the chest. Nobody can see. Everybody's sitting here getting ready to connive and backstab, and that's it. And we're just going to build our characters in secret, and that's that. What do you think about that? And it's like, I'm a little bored of it. I've did that for like a decade. I don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
I like 4E and all these games where it's like, yeah, we're together in this and we're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this and I'll support you in that, and yay.
Yeah, it goes into the idea, like, he has keywords that he really was aiming for. It was, thematic, heroic, tactical combat, and that
Yeah,
is what he was looking for and what the rules really support. We've talked about that before, where it's kinda like, the game has an opinion about how you and your other player characters ought to be conducting yourself under the normal course of business. And
yeah.
as part of that, it really does, help to emulate that.
Let's see what else here. We've covered anything we think we need to cover more for Draw Steel. I mean, we can always come back to it, but I've talked 2 streams about Draw Steel. I think we've covered a good section of it. I think we just need to play it more too. We
Yeah.
can't talk like we know everything until
Yeah.
we've at least
We've hit
completed
all
this
of
scenario.
level 2.
Yeah, that is the thing. Yeah, we hit level 2. Woo! But I do
I
like it.
mean,
It's
granted,
nicely paced. So,
yeah, the
yeah,
Dealing Tomb is a fantastic adventure, and that's what we're running right now.
right.
It is a really well designed introduction. There's basically like two parts to the Dealing Tomb. There is kind of like the initial introduction to it, and then once you get through the first floor, then it's like, okay, and now this is just an adventure that you can run, but it takes the entirety of like the first floor, which is honestly like a session, to basically teach you how everything works, and
Right.
then it just slowly drips feeds like other pieces to you, like, okay, here's how this element of the game works, and it's a really thoughtfully designed introduction to the game.
Yeah. Well, I think they realize that. It's like you need to have an intro scenario that's gonna make people understand what the hell is going on. So, let's see, what else did we put on the itinerary as it is here? General challenges of running a table as a GM. What have you found? I guess keep it like for our Friday group. What are the problems that you've had
Oh,
for running for us goons?
I wasn't thinking about that per se, but
Sure.
I think the challenge whenever you're running a table is how are you engaging with the players and what are the players engaging with, and it becomes kind of a not a tightrope walk, but it does become something that you're looking to balance on, which is what players want more attention, what players want less attention. How do you make sure that what the players are looking for out of the game are they getting what they're looking for out of the game? And are you able to bridge that gap between the wants and the needs of your different players at the table? And that's
Right.
always been, that's kind of like GMing 101. Like that's the job. That is the challenge.
Sure.
Um,
I specifically for the Friday group, I think it's gotten to the point where like for some people you have to realize like they're at low energy and there's really not a
mhm,
whole lot you can do to pump them up.
to
That's a
bring them in.
them
Yep.
thing. And it's not I'm not trying to say you should kind of abdicate responsibility for that, but you have to you can't take that personally. I think a lot of times people
Oh
have
yeah.
played they're like, why isn't this guy interacting? What's going on? And I've seen that a lot of con games because there are times where I'm
Mhm.
like I'm active and talking or I'm just sitting back because there was one really awesome Pendragon game that I was in and the guy was like, are you okay? You getting enough to do? And I'm like, I'm perfectly fine. I'm juggling stuff. I'm listening. There's one guy who was playing an Irish knight, so naturally he's like, I'm gonna talk with a brogue and do all this. I'm like, awesome, cool, all right. I think he got it after like the first 45 minutes that it was like, all right, dude, you need to let other people talk. It was one of those things, he didn't realize you have to pass the ball, but after a while, it was like, okay, cool. Everybody got into their character. Everybody had input and whatnot. The players need to build their own tempo. I think. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of what the GM kind of puts on themselves, where they think like, "Oh my god, I didn't set up a good enough platter," and they dislike the smorgasbord that I've set up. And it's like, sometimes players bring their hangups with them, and that's just going to be the way it is. You
Yeah.
need to just kind of keep the energy up for everybody else and do what you can. Some guys you're not going to be able to get them to buy in; they're going to need to do it. So
Yeah, and it's kinda like you just gotta be aware of and watch kind of like your players to understand, like, yeah, someone might be just having an off week. And in
yeah,
that case, like you gotta make that call. It's just like, okay, like is this simply a week where like I'm just not like they're not looking to engage with the game really right now. They're here because we're friends. They want something shared to do. Let's make it a little easy on them. Let's give them like low stakes stuff to do. Let's just bring them along for the adventure, but not ask them to take their shift driving per se.
right, yeah,
Um, I think a couple other things I had was how much exposition should you be doing as a GM? That's
right,
always a piece that I know personally I have more trouble with my Wednesday game, which is my Daggerheart game, than my
sure.
Draw Steel game. And a big part of that is because Daggerheart didn't give me a fancy adventure to run. Daggerheart gave me an IKEA what was it? An IKEA booklet and told me to go ahead and build this thing. And
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say I've got Daggerheart. Yeah, all they give you is the campaign frameworks, right? Yeah,
yep.
that
Like
you can't start
it's
off in a campaign. Like you need a one shot adventure to see if
they
people even like the taste of the game. You
they do
know?
have those. I couldn't run that because they'd already run it in person for like
Oh,
their other stuff. So it's just like, okay, so I'm just screwed out of that one. So I've got to build out this campaign frame. And it's really a question of, when you're running, especially when you're not using maps and when you're on a VTT, like how much can you give exposition to? And how can you prompt your players to ask questions about their surroundings that give them the information that they want? Because you know I've had players ask like what's the situation with like the birds or something like that, and it's just like I definitely didn't describe there being any birds around, but yeah, like okay, the
yeah,
birds are here and
yeah,
this is what they are doing. And basically like having that developing that muscle for conversation is really
yeah,
helpful because as a GM, like there also comes a point where if I'm not giving you enough exposition to even understand what questions you should be asking, that's when you've kind of like messed up as a GM, where it's like,
well,
okay, you
I
don't
think
know
they're
what's happening around you, so
right.
you have no idea what you should be asking.
Well, I think that's the thing. You can give them a base framework, and then people will go, "What is up over here?" And then you paint in the stuff. I think
Exactly.
if there's almost too much exposition, yeah, when you're like, people are like, "Oh, you got to describe the smells and the taste of the air and all this," and it's like, if it's important, if it's leading to something, yes. Otherwise, let the players ask for stuff, and yeah, for sure. I mean, in most cases, you can go yes and expound upon what the players are saying. I think
Yep.
who brought it up? It might have been Bear on one of his streams where it was like players were saying, "Oh my god, I think it's this, and this is what's happening," and it's like, well, yeah, now that's what's happening because he's just developing the story as he's going, and it's like, why not let the players think they figured it out, and then just go along with it. If it's if because they've already thought it in their head that this is how it is going, then it just makes
Mhm.
logical sense to just make it go that way instead of being like, "Nope, you're
Yep.
wrong, dummy," and hitting them with a stick. Instead, it's
Yep.
like, "Yeah, sure, no, you just play off of it." That's what was that indie RPG Archipelago, I think, had that where it was you had instead of dice you had cards where it was like yes and no but and all that. So it had that five different varying degrees of like what has happened in success and all that stuff in a scene, and then people who were not directly in the scene that are almost like the Greek chorus audience members, and they could say like, hey, more of this, or more drama, let's move on, stuff like that. It's like you have to, it's almost like you should play that to learn narrative flow and what
Mhm.
people like.
Yeah.
Hey Jerry,
An
what's going on?
another big challenge that I run into specifically because I play 1 to 2 in-person sessions a year at this point.
Oof.
Um,
We got to
and
get you back at conventions.
yeah, I mean, at some point, like I am
Yeah,
hoping next year I'll be able to swing travel for some,
sure.
but it's distractions in the world of VTTs. And
Yeah,
distractions in the world of VTTs because like we're playing on a browser, your Gmail is right there. A little
yeah,
indie game can be right here, and no one would ever know except that you're not paying attention to what's happening around you. And the fact that you're in your own house with the distractions around you of, you know, kids of, it doesn't happen often on Fridays because my wife's normally home on Fridays, but my Wednesday group has seen my daughter many a time where she just kind of runs down and it's just like, "Daddy, I need water," or there's some other problem, and it's just like,
right.
"Okay, guys, I will be back in a minute. I have to go tuck my daughter back to bed."
Right. Well,
And
for us, it's a
so
fun distraction because she'll come wandering into the room and be like, "Daddy, here's my Pokemons," and just start talking about them. And we're
yes.
like, "This is hilarious."
But yeah, it's kind of like there's a lot going on, and it's different. It was almost like that ritual of going to a place, of finishing. We used to play on Thursdays and Friday nights, and we
Yeah,
basically had a ritual that we would get together, we would eat a meal together, and then we would play a game for like 4 to 5 hours.
yeah,
Or for some of us, about 2.5 hours before they passed out at the table, which is also a challenge for VTTs because it's like,
yeah.
oh, well, like we're calling on you, and but we can physically see that you're asleep when
Right,
we're sitting at the same table. But now it's kind of like, oh, you might be passed out in your chair because
right.
we're all also older, and I mean
Yeah.
that's part of it too, like
Father
managing,
Time is
and
coming for us all.
yeah, and I play during weekdays because I keep my weekends open for just family stuff, which means that, you know, that means that basically like I'm working a full day, getting online, playing pretend with my friends for a couple hours, and hoping that everyone didn't have like the worst day on the job of their lives as opposed to, something else happening.
Yeah.
So it's been challenging, but at the same time, I've also got to say, VTTs have made running games for me personally so much easier. The
Yeah.
level of automation and support that I can find for tools really, really has been helpful, especially on the battle map front. I think in the before times, if we when we were running, battle maps were always the bane of my existence because I have next to zero artistic skill, and it was always questions of like, okay, how can I get like a good map going that's like interesting and dynamic for you guys? We had
Sure.
like a big chess board that we would use, but it's kind of like battle map development really isn't part of my DM skill set yet. So I would
Right.
run things like Edge of the Empire, like Fate, where it's just like, yeah, we're using range bands here. Like it's not
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a set
There's
piece.
there's a level of abstraction there. You don't have to feel like, all right, I need to break out the Dwarven Forge now, guys. Give me 45 minutes. It's like,
Yeah,
no.
which is one of the reasons why, like, playing on a VTT and using that shorthand of a map for a lot of different things has been really helpful. You know, at one point,
Yeah.
we bought a projector to basically try to help with that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We bought a projector to display at a whiteboard so that we could run battle maps, like, on a whiteboard.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, we got the whiteboard in general because that was great for organization because we could sit around the
Yeah.
table and then you could draw out the battle on the whiteboard if you wanted instead of having it on the center of the table, especially depending on like if people are eating or whatever the situation is. Yeah, the
Mhm.
whiteboard open things. So we did a lot of little tinkering here and there because I remember, yeah, I was what was that? Jess was
And
bringing up.
lots of
I was
fancy magnets.
yeah, oh yeah, the Alea Tools magnets. I was wearing the a beard that a ex girlfriend made for me because I was playing a dwarf in Doc Flamingo's game on Monday. But I was at what is that one place? Is it Joanne Fabrics or was it
Yeah, I think
Michaels?
so.
They sell swatches of because she was big into crochet or whatever like that. And I was like, I bought a strip of I bought a sheet of vinyl and felt.
Felt and
So
leather. Yeah,
yeah,
I
it
remember
was
that.
vinyl, and I remember, yeah, now because we were gonna stitch it, and then we're just like, "Fuck it," we could just cut it to the shape of the table and put it on top. That way, when we're rolling dice, because we're downstairs, we don't want dice clacking. We're playing sometimes up till 2 in the morning. We don't want to wake up the whole house. So it was like it dulled it. It made it nice and quiet when we were playing. And it was all a nice kind of soft surface on the table and everything like that. It was just these little upgrades we kind of kept adding on. We kept doing like engineers. We're like, all right, it's game room Mark II. Now it's Mark III. Yeah, we did try doing a projector. I don't know. I don't know how useful that was. I don't think it really worked out.
It wound up not being too useful. The
Yeah.
resolution was just too bad.
Yeah.
Daryl, I think the thing when you mentioned troubleshooting cameras and mics, the thing that pops to my mind was the disaster that was, in my opinion, it was a disaster of Gen Con Online or Origins Online. One of the two did a game where or did a whole year when it was all virtual. So it was a virtual convention. And I was in a game where the GM honestly lost his shit because someone kept interrupting him.
Yeah.
And the reason the guy kept interrupting him was because the guy was on like a 10-second delay.
Oh no.
So, like, he was responding to a thing said a while ago while
Yeah.
the GM was trying to explain something new. Only time I've seen that happen, but it was rough. But yeah, you know, I can't tell you how many games I've had to cancel because my power went out or a tornado's gonna blow through tonight. So I just have to tell the
Yeah.
guys, hey, I'm gonna like push this week because I don't know if I'm gonna have power to run a VTT.
Well, especially the last 2 Wednesdays, we've had crazy storms in here. Like, yeah, I had to Wednesday's my board game night that we do on for Tabletop Simulator and other stuff we do online. And I was just like, yeah, I got no power, so just not showing up because yeah, it was just every tree in the area was blown up. They're
Yeah.
still picking up branches like 2.5 weeks later.
Yeah,
But yeah.
and training people to use VTTs is tricky and hard. The the one nice thing is that at this point, because I've been doing this for so long and most of my players have too, like we've got it down pretty down pat in terms of like the tools we're using between Foundry, Roll20 with D&D Beyond, now Codex, you know, knowing how to like use these tools really like helps simplify things. And it's kind of like it's that trade-off of automation. It's the only reason why I haven't picked up Owlbear Rodeo
Mhm.
is because it's not automated. It is very much okay, you got to do these things and then you have to do these things and these things. And it's a very manual process, which makes it
Right.
compatible with everything. Because if it's
Right.
manual, then you are the person that's in charge of this whole like kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like a situation where because of that, my Wednesday group on average have had me or one of two other people as their DM their entire time, and they've all been playing for less than 3 years.
Oh
So
well.
as a result, like they're all brand new to gaming. So you know, as I'm teaching them, as we're playing together and learning things like Daggerheart, you know, it's a really neat time for them to kind of like explore different rule sets, explore different games, different worlds, tell silly different stories, kill some monsters, have a good time. And then with the Friday group, like we're all way more experienced, but we are all exhausted.
Well, let's see here. Looking through the chat if there's any questions or whatnot, because I think we've covered everything that was listed on the objectives here. We're slightly over time, but that's okay. We're not too crazy here. We're doing all right. Anything off the top of your head you feel like we missed or you want to discuss with the handful of people we got?
Yeah, if you all have any questions about Draw Steel or something like that, please, send them through to Paul. I'll take a look at them and answer as best I
Well,
can.
we'll try to parse it out for you. I think there was some things about Draw Steel that were brought up. I think it was mostly financial stuff because what was that? They did the backer kit for MCDM. That's what it was called, the RPG at the time.
Yep.
And then they did one for like Fancy Pants Dice, and I was like,
Oh
but
yeah, they did one for fancy dice. They did one, I think, for like special cards or something, and I
well,
skipped all those because
yeah,
they're not necessary. I backed heroes, I backed monsters, and I've backed. I think that their Crack the Sun campaign. Really interesting. I'm very
okay.
curious to see how that goes, which is going to be like another full adventure. And because
Now,
it's
is it just
them,
going to be a full adventure? Or is it going to go take you all the way to level 10? Because 10's the max. So
I think it's taking you all the way there. Like it's a
okay,
from the understanding you are basically, cracking the sun. So the level of power that seems to
right.
require would suggest quite high level.
Well, I think that was what I liked about the setting too. It had some wacky stuff. Like there was some races and classes that really weren't very D&D, and they
Hmm.
threw them in there because yeah, my guys like from the plane of Law and Order
Timescape.
or whatever,
Yep.
the Timescape or whatever. Yeah, they're like these like silicon based people, almost like androids. So I was like, okay, I've my whatever, my void ship fell here or my time ship, and that's why, yeah, in the VTT that's used every time you activate your turn, you can add like a little theme song that plays, and I just do the little stinger from Flash Gordon because that's kind of the character, he's this kind of swashbuckling character that fell from another place. That's like, okay, that's cool because I think what was it? The thief is like a wood elfish type guy, the
Yep.
sorcerer or magic user is like a halfling, pretty much their
Hmm.
version of a halfling. We've got the troubadours and orc, and the my guy is the weird race, and they've got a few other weird races too in there. So they
I
give you a
mean,
little bit
the
more
elves in
than
the
the
game are
standard.
weird.
Well, the elves in there are very strange, especially the woad elves. Yeah, they're just like
Yep.
you're like, oh, okay. I like that though. I like that. Yeah, you have the woad elves, which are like, oh, okay, cool. These are crazy forest people, and then they have the elves that everybody's going to play.
Oh
They're
yeah, the
like,
high elf kind of folk.
we live in an alabaster tower, far away from you, poor people, and you're like, wonderful. We're gonna blow it up anyway. Let's see here. The yes and yes but etc. for resolving outcomes sounds difficult for GM to describe on the spot. Any suggestions for non-binary outcomes? I think I think the yes and stuff like that. It's really just adding on to it. You're spinning out like if somebody says, "Hey, what about this?" You find a way to twist it in there. Like I said, there's going to be some caveats. You're going to have the one asshole who's going to be there to derail you and T-bone you because he's a jerk. Forget him. We're talking about the good players. When they add something in, you go, "Okay, how do I spin this into the big ball of yarn that we already have going?" You probably have some better descriptions of this because you've been running more recently.
Well, it's not even just that, but it goes back to my favorite game, Edge of the Empire. Like,
Okay,
yes and no but, or no but and yes and or yes but. Like all those are really Edge of the Empire had such great tables for helping you like explain like what the cost could be. In Draw Steel specifically, like I think it's really a question of what are the constraints around the success here, um, or what is an additional piece of information that's kind of on the fence about what they could have or don't have. So oftentimes,
yeah,
like someone rolls like a yes and thing, which is just like you've hit the critical success. You jump into it, and even you can think of it in D&D. What happens when someone hits a critical success? It's just is it just yes, or is it yes and something else? And
right,
you treat that as kind of like your tier 3 success. Your yes buts can be the trickier ones, and those tend to be like you look at what is the cost, what is the danger, what is the challenge of this situation. Could be something like, yeah, you see that there is a trap here, but as you kind of pull your hand away, it triggers. So you get like an advantage on your attempt to dodge it. Or you could have something where it's, oh, this person, you're trying to get a read on someone, and it's just like, okay, you have understood this person, and this is what this guy is going through, but he notices that you are scrutinizing his every word, and that's going to have like other consequences. Consequences don't have to be like health. Oftentimes it's to go to a game that neither Paul or I love. It's a question of position. Like
Yeah,
what is the
it's more
position you're in?
I'd say, yeah, narrative footing. I think a lot of
Hmm.
what's his name, Jeff, the guy who redesigned, he did the recent Robotech RPG for Strange Machine. It was narrative positioning was what
Yeah.
he was always saying, and that's why what affected how the dice succeed, what's going on in the situation. You see it a lot in Fate, where you have tags in the scene where it's like, oh, there's leaking fuel barrels, let's shoot those and they'll explode, and you could do other stuff like that. It's, setting up pieces where it's like there's the success failure, but you want to keep the kind of like the cinema going. So that's
Hmm.
where the ands and buts are. It's like, oh, you did good. Like Jackie Chan made it. He made the leap across the building, but his toes caught, and he's doing the thing where he's like, whoa, he might fall off. So that's where he's set up until next turn, and we'll see what the hell happens. You build the almost little mini cliffhangers until that guy's next initiative. That's all it is. It's just flavor. You don't have
Yeah.
to think too hard about it. Yeah, I think that, like you said, don't put in hard mechanics to it where you're losing, the hit points or anything like that.
I mean,
For
there's
sure.
sometimes where it does make sense, but
Sure.
it's not. It's kind of like that's the easy answer, like to spend resources. But the narrative responses are almost always more interesting. Another great place if you're looking for ideas on how to resolve trickier outcomes, especially the yes but. Um, in terms of if you're looking for someone that has a yes but, Powered by the Apocalypse, like your most common success is a yes but. So if
Yeah.
you look through anything PBTA, there's a lot of them out there, even Fortune in the Dark stuff. You can look at them and look at the ways that they talk to you about positioning both the narrative consequences and potentially like mechanical consequences.
Yep.
For no and I feel like that feels like you can download some of the GM stuff
Right.
or some of the GM cheat sheets in like for Edge of the Empire or any of the other FFG Star Wars games and look through just some of the things that they suggest for like here's what you do if you rolled a success with threat, here's what you do if you rolled a failure with hope, and just kind of like organize it all, and you can kind of see like what they suggest in terms of like something is more difficult for a friend of yours, something is easier for a friend of yours even though you failed. You succeeded in picking the lock, but here comes a bunch of stormtroopers. Oh, like you hear a squawk of a stormtrooper saying that reinforcements are on the way. All kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
big
Well,
thing is, and this was a mistake I made when I was running Star Wars, is don't let a yes but turn into a no, which
right.
is a challenging
It's
thing to make sure you don't
Yeah.
do.
That's the fine line, and it has to be you succeeded at what you're doing, but we're setting up the next challenge that you're going to. Like I said, it's just the rhythm of it. You don't want That was always my problem with reading those rune dice. It's like, hey, I failed and I got kicked in the balls. I don't like this at all. I don't like why this happened. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the little modulation up and down. It's just to kind of. I always bring him up. Robin D. Laws wrote a book called Hamlet's Hit Points, and he specifically takes. I forget what it was. It was three different narrative types. There was a movie, Hamlet, which is a play, and something else, which might have been like a novel or a comic book or whatever like that. And he shows the up and down of the plot as it goes compared to the character. He says, "Okay, see, Hamlet is the main PC of this RPG or this story. watch his ups and downs, the up and down ticks of the story as it goes, and it kind of shows you that modulates the narrative. And that's really all that does. It's just you're flavoring the success and failure as opposed to just the straight binary, as I call it, the combat of D&D, which is rock'em sock'em robots, where you're like hit, miss, damage, and that's it. And you're like, fascinating. Great way to play. Anyway, we're going to digress into that. Let's see here. We're at an hour and 45. I think we've covered everything. I have no idea what we'll talk about next time, but I'll figure that out. I have a whole week to do it. Any final words, Mr. David?
No, thanks for having me on, Paul.
Sure. Anytime,
Yeah,
man. Yeah.
and thank you guys
I
for
was,
listening to our chat.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. We had about a good 8 to 10 people sticking with us through this entire almost 2 hour crazy delve into a bunch of different indie games. If you guys have any questions, you know where to reach me, either here in the comments or I'm on Discord. You guys will have whatever any inklings of questions. Let me know. We'll that'll fuel the next one, and we'll just kind of keep it going. But till next time, guys, we'll catch you later.